Long time no see, guys. This is going to be my first Dota diary in some time, and today I'm going to be talking about the key mindset shift that I have had and how it has done wonders for my consistency and my enjoyment in life as well as in Dota. And that is where all of us stem our lives from, am I right? So I call this philosophy that I've really embraced to be the 7 philosophy. And if you're wondering if you should click out of this video, I ask you 2 questions. Do you find yourself sporadically gaining and losing MMR in large bunches just to end up in the same place? Or do you perhaps find yourself going hard at the gym for a few months at a time, burning out, quitting for a year, and then doing it all over again the next time? And spoiler alert, if this is for you, it was also for me, because that was what I was doing, I would say, for pretty much all of my 20s. And I am 30 now. Yikes. And this video I have made because so many people have asked me these questions about Dota-related, life-related issues, and all I can think about in terms of giving them advice or talking about what I did to improve on these things has been really this. I just wanted them to have this video as an answer. So if you guys are coming from my Twitch chat where I recommended you here, whether you found me on YouTube, welcome. These are the most important videos to me, my Dota diaries, as they talk very much about the lessons I've learned, the meaningful changes I've made in my life, and how you can make them too. So I call this mindset the 7 philosophy, and it is partially based in Stoicism. It's the aspect of how an attitude of calm indifference towards external events can make you an overall happier person. And the idea of Stoicism, in a nutshell, at least in relevance to this video, is that learning to try to control things that you can control and accepting things that you cannot control is really the key to less anxiety, less stress, less burnout, etc. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that we can't do anything about, and if we're dwelling on them, such as your teammates in a game of Dota, and if we dwell on these things that we cannot control, and they are the focus of our thoughts, we end up not having an actionable solution, because how can you do anything about it if you can't control it? And I think a lot of this video is not only talking about this philosophy, but also helping you guys hopefully ask yourself the right questions to know whether you can control something. Because for me, at least, it wasn't super obvious what things were in my control and which things were not. I'd like to give a shout out to Blitz Dota. He's the head coach of the Team Liquid Dota team, because even though he had no intent of me ever doing this video, he did instill this sort of ideology in me when we were going to the gym just about a year and a half ago. I used to go to the gym kind of lacking a purpose. I would go, I'd do the reps, but honestly, like, I didn't have any meaningful gains. I didn't feel like I was accomplishing anything. It's just like, I'm just going through the motions, putting some weights up. And what changed for me so much when I went to the gym with Blitz was that every time I would do a set, he would ask me how hard that was on a scale of 1 to 10. He didn't judge me based on how much weight I was doing. At the time, he would actually purposely conceal how much weight I was doing. Like, he didn't want me to know how much weight I was doing. And he would just ask me every single set for months. He would say, how hard was that? Scale of 1 to 10. And his goal was to always have it be a 7. Now, there were days where we'd occasionally push it to 8, maybe a 9 for one set, but his goal was to consistently have it be a 7. If it felt like an 8, maybe lower down the weight a little bit. If it felt like a 5 or a 6, let's bump it up. Now, what is a 7? That's a great question. Where does that even start? Well, it is a scale of 1 to 10 on effort, and I consider 5 to basically be like autopilot. Instincts are kind of carrying you. And a 5 is just like, you're putting in the work, you're doing something meaningful, but you're not really conscious about like what you're doing. That's like me going to the gym and going through the sets, but that's about it. That is a 5. When we're talking about like a 1, we're talking about like you're laying in bed, relaxing, virtually no effort, not really thinking about anything, not putting in any work. So 5 is cruising through our daily tasks. 10 is, if your life depended on it, you are literally using every ounce of energy, every bone in your body to accomplish whatever you're doing. That is a 10. And a 7 is somewhere in between. And the way I view a 7 myself is that I am actively engaging. I am critically thinking about what I'm doing. I'm putting a degree of effort at the gym, for instance, where I'm pushing myself, but I can, identify my own limitation of don't push too hard, don't hurt myself. I'm not forcing myself to do any weight. It's just, does it feel doable? Is it tough, but not too tough? And that's where a 7 is. And what's so important about him asking me this every single day. And what I learned at the gym was how much it teaches you about self-awareness. Like for everybody, a 7 is different. That's why this philosophy is so important to me, is because your 7 is gonna be different than my 7 in regards to literally anything. And what's so cool about this idea of a 7 is that some days, even within an individual such as yourself, a 7 is gonna be different than it is another day. Let's say you go to the gym and you didn't get very much sleep. You didn't eat a good meal for lunch. You had a really big argument with your girlfriend the night before. Then what do you know? You're probably not gonna feel all that great. And a 7 might just be going to the gym in the first place and doing like 1 or 2 sets of anything, or just walking on the treadmill for 10 minutes. Maybe you're the first time going to the gym ever. That 7 could just be going. But over time, what happens, and that I can assure you, is once you first understand what a 7 is, which is repetition of asking yourself that question, that 7 will slowly expand upon itself, creating these good habits and focusing on that consistent effort level rather than sporadically going for 10s or 1s, and vice versa. You will notice gains in whatever you're doing. Suddenly a 7 1 month later is 5 extra pounds on your bench press. And it's not something you plan for. And you don't even have to be like trying or looking out for it. As long as you're asking yourself what a 7 is. Just like one day at the gym, I was like, holy shit, like 180 pounds? That's not a 7 anymore. Guess I'm going to 190. And while that seems like too good to be true, it truly worked for me. And that's what this video has been all about. It's why I'm making this video. And so I've been using the gym as my primary analogy here because that's where I learned this idea, and I have been like extrapolating it into my Dota gameplay. So a 7 for me in Dota is like adding a new skill. It's like, oh, I'm working on a new hero. Oh, I'm practicing a new CS mechanic. Oh, I'm trying to work on a new item. I'm doing something that I'm working towards. It could even just be I'm trying to be consistent. I'm trying to make sure I don't tilt. You know, I'm trying to use my mental effort to not react to negative stimuli. It could literally be anything, but I'm consciously working on something. And what I notice is when I consciously work on something, just say it's CSing for a month, suddenly what I did in CSing, like microing on Naga Siren or, you know, pump faking CS to outtime the guy, after about a month of that, I don't have to try very hard and I can just do it without any effort whatsoever. And suddenly that's the green light to move on to something else, because I realize that it doesn't take me a 7 to focus on that anymore. And as you accrue more and more little things, suddenly that 7 just keeps going up and up. And not only that, but in Dota, there also are some days where you kind of like feel like crap, you know? You feel like you're not really thinking straight. And a 7 might just be playing well enough to have a chance to win, just trying to keep it together. For me, that happens more often than I would hope it would happen for you guys, because there's just days because it's my job that I have to play. For you, if you don't feel like your 7 is going to be good enough to win, and you care about your MMR, it might just be best not play that day at all. And that's something that I've also begun to learn, is like, some days my 7 just ain't gonna cut it. So if my 7 is likely gonna result in me having a win-loss that's less than even, should I even play? And so it's like, if I took a day off the day before, I'm gonna play anyways. If I haven't taken a day off in 4 or 5 days, I'm taking a day off. And that's because I'm all aware of what this 7 is gonna be for me. So I hope I haven't bored you guys yet, because a lot of you may be asking, why is this so important to you, BSJ? Why should I give a shit? If I'm still here, I must care enough to... I mean, you must have sparked my curiosity, BSJ. And the reason why this is so important is because I'm answering the question of how to know whether or not you control something. And so I mentioned at the start of the video that there's things that I thought I could control that I can't. And an example would be, I'll ask you questions, right? Let's just use some simple example questions. Can you control if you win a Dota game? I would have answered yes if it was 2 years ago. A lot of you may be answering yes. And the way you know if you control something is if you do everything within your power that you know possible, will you accomplish it every single time? So if I ask you again, if you play really well in a Dota game, will you win 100% of the time? If you play really poorly, will you lose 100% of the time? And I think if you kind of followed me on this wavelength here, that you're maybe coming to the same conclusion I kind of came to, that we can't control whether or not we win or lose a Dota game. We can only control our impact, our contribution to the game. And you know, so many people talk about focusing on what you did wrong and what you could have done better and not caring about the win-loss. What I've learned so much from this 7 philosophy is the things that we want to gain muscle mass at the gym, to gain MMR in the Dota world. They're a culmination of a lot of things, very few of which we can actually control. An example of control is doing things with a purpose. So if I tell myself, today, I'm gonna pick from a small pool of heroes and I'm gonna practice ranged carries today. Even if my teammates feed their freaking brains out, if I'm focusing on my positioning and trying to understand better ranged heroes, or I'm trying to understand a specific hero's item build or laning stage. No matter what happens in the game, if my goal going into it was to have better CS on Drow, if that was my goal and I did CS trainer to warm up in the day and I go into my game and I'm really focused on CSing, every time I miss a CS, I'm thinking like what I could do for the next one. What ends up happening is for that game, I'm judging my CS based on the goal that I had going into the game, because that goal represents my 7. And so for some of you, it may not be this easy to establish goals. A lot of understanding what the goals can be, having realistic ones, is gonna follow you understanding your own 7. It's like an example would be, I'm not ready to learn Arc Warden yet. There's just too many skills I have lacking that are needed to play Arc Warden. Positioning, double item casting, micro, and it's like, I'm not good enough at like 4 of those things that I would have to be working on 4 of them at once. So let's go for a hero that's positioning first, right? Then we can work on a micro hero next. And then we can work on a hero that buys a bunch of active items like Tinker. And maybe after that, I'd be ready to play Arc Warden. Now, that's just an example of understanding what a 7 is for me. What they don't want you to know, what the scientists don't want you to know, is that these things I'm telling you that I'm concerning myself with, like playing my own game, having my own goals to accomplish certain things when I'm playing, when I go to the gym, these things make me gain MMR. These things increase my limits in regards to weight and reps. I don't see it immediately. It's not something that I'm even like looking for. It's just like eventually I'm like, holy shit, I'm winning games. I realized there's a game that in the past I would have lost, but this time around I had 5 extra CS in lane, hit my item timing that much quicker, barely had my BKB in time for Roche, took the fight and won. And these are the type of things that it's really hard to see, because the 7 is gauging things that you can control, and it leads to good things coming that are affected by things you can't control. And you learn to basically be okay with yourself. What I mean by okay with yourself is I personally am pretty hard on myself. A lot of the time, I overthink things. I kind of get down on myself if I'm messing up. And I think a lot of the times it's because I never distinguished between things that I could do something about and things I couldn't do anything about. And it's equally important not only to assess things that you can't do anything about and just accept that that is what it is, nothing I can do, but it's also like equally important to take accountability for things you could have done something about. To be honest, if your team's feeding their brains out and you have one really bad death 40 minutes into the game, your concern should be that one bad death you had at 40 minutes, what could you have done to avoid it? Because that's something you could have done. And it is frustrating. It is frustrating to ever blame yourself for that loss. And that's the problem where it comes in, is the 7 philosophy is just about holding yourself to a standard that you're trying to accomplish, this effort level that you're trying to go for. And you're looking for little mistakes that you're making, but there's no blame being assigned. The word blame is such a bait. Whose fault was this game? Why did my teammates make this game so hard? These are the type of questions that sometimes I find myself asking myself when I'm really tilted or frustrated. It's not like you become Zen mode, everything's perfectly fine. The 7 philosophy teaches you to have a base, roots of where you can go back to whenever you don't know what to assess yourself on. Because there's a lot of things out there that can distract us, dissuade us from progress. So in conclusion, I think the most important thing about this is that there are so many external factors that will affect you positively and negatively, and they will alter your 7. And that's the important part. There are certain things in life that are going to make the same tasks harder than they were before. There's going to be certain things in life that make them better or easier. And as long as you're aware of what that 7 is, you'll be able to hit those new highs on the good opportunities that come to you. And you'll be able to avoid getting in your own head and getting too down on yourself, demotivated, burned out, when just life ain't quite going your way. And you'll be fair to yourself about what that 7 is on some of those off days. I hope this helps you guys. Please feel free to come into my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/bananaslamjamma, and talk to me about this video. Let me know if there's something that didn't quite click, something that just really resonated with you. I'd love to hear it. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Man, I feel so cheap.